And a whole lot of people would be a lot healthier if we thought that way instead of eating for pleasure, of eating because it's part of being healthy. And then I can learn how to make it palatable to my own taste. Okay, confidence, security, feeding even part of, if you're keeping him on track, he knows you're going to provide, so he's going to be more secure. That's where routines kind of help. He knows dinner's going to come instead of wondering. Some kids don't know when they're ever going to get fed. It's always up in the air. Routines help with that. Gave you a few routines here about different ages. Newborns, 3, 8 months, 14 to 18 months. Again, that's average. Your child may be different on what's listed there. Mealtime gives a lot of opportunity for social behavior. Let's face it, meals are when we do a lot of socializing. So you start by baby eats with mom, that's where you always start. Then baby eats with the rest of the family, and then with the extended family, and then with guests, and then as a guest you've gone someplace out, and then out in public. So these are socializations, and you're training them in each step of these ways. The thankfulness, I have a bunch of stuff there about that. As I say there, serve something several times to learn to like it, or at least tolerate it, at least swallow it and get praise from mom. Good boy, you swallowed it, that's great. You know, again, if he doesn't like it, try to get a month or two. Wait 6 months, try a different recipe, try some sauce on it. Sleeping habits, again, some generalizations there on that page. Eventually you want to teach them to fall asleep on their own. That's a learned skill. Okay, so you have to help that. Be careful, train the child to fall asleep, and emphasize only when there are certain things present. Then they're not going to do that. We would switch the kids from room to room sometimes with playpen on where they would fall asleep for a nap, simply so they could fall asleep in a dark room and in a light room. We sometimes would move it, so sometimes it'd be absolutely quiet, sometimes a little noisy, because they still fall asleep when it's noisy. And that was a great blessing, because we would be different places a lot, and they need to be able to fall asleep in a whole different environment, not with it has to have this particular thing. So be careful of that. Rocking, cuddling your child, yes, please do it. Just be careful that they can only go to sleep if that happens. They need to be able to do that. So make sure you have a routine, not something they're going to end up demanding. Perseverance, sleeping alone in a crib, bed, being content. Again, that's an additional skill. I've got some ideas there. One thing that happens, especially when the kids are young, you know, at the either infants or even early toddlers, is rushing in every time the baby makes a noise. They need to learn to go back to sleep. So give them 5 or 10 minutes to see if they're continuing. Even if they cry, give them a couple minutes. Okay? You can try this. They're crying. Look at your watch. And if it's not a cry, and hopefully you've learned to distinguish your cries, if it's a pain cry, of course go up immediately. If you're on top of this, you know a cry of a wet diaper, or a poopy diaper too, right? I'm going to say that's one of the problems with the demand feeding idea. It's a lot harder to learn the difference in the cries. It takes you a lot longer to learn it. But you will tell, and you all have had babies, you know, you can learn. They have different cries for different things. If it's a fussy cry or something, count 5 minutes. Watch your, I know it's going to be terrible. I'm watching this. This is terrible. Wait 5 minutes. Then go see if they got help. Unless it's one of the other cries. If just fussy, let them go back to sleep. It's a skill. And when you get to be 60, you really need to have that skill to be able to go back to sleep, because you're waking up a lot. Okay? It's a skill for life. Okay, guidelines are this. A, nap begins when mom and dad say it begins. Okay? Because you're assessing everything. You're assessing what's going on with your child. You have a routine. You can see they're tired, maybe they're getting sick, they need to go down early. They need more sleep. You can assess that. You may have a schedule such as, I can't get them down to normal time, it's going to begin a little later. So you're going to keep them up a little longer. Or you know in your schedule today, you need to have them very tired so they will go to sleep because you know what's going on. You're assessing that, and that's why you're directing it. So it begins when mom and dad say, it ends when mom and dad say it ends. Okay? The child should end the nap with a happy spirit. So, what does that mean? They should be able to wake up and actually play in their crib. If you've been doing the other things, they actually will have learned to play with the crib, even if all they have are the crib toys in there. Now, if they're already in a bed, that means they stay in the bed or stay in the room, depending how old they are and what you've asked of them, until you come and get them. Okay? As they get older, they may even call out to you, you know, I'm away, can I come down? Well, that's for you to assess. That's simply information. But they're asking, not demanding. That's the big difference, okay? Flexibility, I just talked about that. Different places, different noises, different positions. Self-control and staying in bed. And climbing out of bed is not acceptable. Jimmy was the most stubborn on this. We actually would put him to bed, and he always wanted to get out. We had to shut the door and had to sit by the door for anywhere from 10 minutes to a half hour, because he would try and come out again. And then it's, all right, we're going to correct you, back in bed. And then he'd do it again. He was stubborn. But stubbornness can be a good thing, because you can train that same character quality in being stubborn about the right things. So don't see it as just a negative. It can be very good, but you have to train it. Okay, godly character playing habits, some ideas here. Playpen, room time. I feel sorry for you because you can't get playpens. I don't know why they're not there. You got these little pack-a-crib things. They're little bitty things. A playpen was big. You could put 3 or 4 kids in there, they have a great time. But it was compact, you fold it up, and you take it with you wherever. Portable play area, portable sleep area, and don't make them anymore. So be creative, figure something out. I know you have the things, you put the walls together. Whatever you have to do. But if you restrict them when they're young to an environment like that, it's a safe place, and you restrict what toys they have. Instead of filling with toys, 1 or 2 at the most, and then you can come in and switch the toys. It helps the child's mental development as well as in learning control. If you're filling with toys, there's too much, there's confusion, and they actually get bored faster because they don't know what to do with it. Kids are learning so much, and they will play with the same toy different ways at different ages, because they're going to analyze this thing and figure all sorts of things to do with it. There's some listing here about different kinds of toys. There's a whole article here on just play. You know, what is really nice is to see how the toy companies have made toys for your children to learn with as they're playing with it at age. And look at the box. It tells you what age. Now, those are, again, child to child can differ. Some were developed early, some later, but they're looking at a development scheme. You know, taking the cone thing with the donuts, different colors. Why do they do that? There's all sorts of mental and physical skills going on with that simple toy. It's incredible. And then you sometimes say rocks, it's a little more difficult. Building blocks as they get older. You go from blocks to Duplos to Legos. All, again, skills they're learning, and fascination as they get more creative. Use your playtime for teaching them so many different things, but restrict it enough they actually can focus on what they're doing. If you give them too much freedom, they're wandering around, they will never learn to sit and concentrate and do that. That same concentration, that skill learned as a toddler, is what's going to enable them to sit at a desk and figure out a problem to pass a class, and sit at a desk or do whatever research necessary to figure out a problem for his job later on, or for her figuring out whatever she needs to do. Okay? It's part of self-control. So use the playtime as a great time for them to learn. Some ideas there, page 14, there's some guidelines on a playpen, working up how many times a day, transitioning, and some of this is going to be considering their nap times. You know, as they're getting older, there's fewer nap times and there are longer nap times. Until there's usually one nap, usually in the afternoon, and then they have playtime earlier. But earlier, they're going to have more naps, so you have shorter playtimes. Guidelines, number 1, limit the number of toys available at one time. I just talked about that. Again, age-appropriate toys that are durable. Spend the extra money to buy a good toy rather than go cheap and buy a cheap toy they tear up quickly. All right? It will last. Yard sales are great, especially if you can find the yuppie neighborhoods where people who had lots of money and one experimental child for the experience had bought very expensive things that you get really, really cheap. That's a great way to pick up stuff. And 4 cautions: be careful of videos. Even the good ones are still passive in what they're teaching. They're passive, and they reduce the child's ability to think and figure things out for themselves. That's actually the biggest problem with that whole genre. The medium itself is passive, and we've grown up with that. I may be 60, but I still grew up in the television age. It was already around, and it was used for babysitting a lot. Not in my family, but in most kids, and it's just gotten worse. It's passive. Even the activity learning ones and Barney and whatever else is out there. Kind of miss the purple dinosaur. Because my kids are doing it, and we'd sing the song clean up, and even those are still passive. Much better if you can get your kid actively involved with things. Their development is so much better. Okay? That's not saying don't use it, just be careful with it. Try and limit it. Sometimes you just need it yourself. It's mesmerizing. Let them watch something and you get done what you need to do, then come back. Just don't let that become the default. Some things on rotating toys. Oh, rotating toys. I mentioned briefly, the same toy 6 months later will be played with a whole different way. So you can rotate them. Cleanup, have them participate, just like you're having your children do that. That becomes part of it. If they have seen Barney, sing the cleanup song. You know, whatever you need to do, but it becomes part of the fun of, we're done, let's all clean up, and we make it a fun time, so that later on, when you just say clean up, they know what to do. Decent in order, if they have a toy box or shelving, where they know where their toys go. What you should never have to do is you come in and their room is a mess with toys that are all over the place. If it is like that, whose fault is it? Don't say your child. Yes, they created it. It was at their hands. But who trained them? All right? Train them to be able to keep things decently in order. That's part of stewardship and part of sanity. Both yours and your child. There's nothing frustrating as they can't find something because it's lost in the mess. So organize some things. A shelf, they put them on the shelf or in the toy box or something, and they take the responsibility to clean up after themselves. If they're cleaning up their toys, what happens later on when they need to help you with the dishes? Or cleaning the house? Or they're on their own and can clean up after themselves. Okay? These are simply skills for life. It starts with something as simple as that. Playmates, sharing. We want to teach them stewardship, respect for property of other people, cooperation, tolerance, flexibility, and conflict resolution. So, first of all, sharing. Sharing is choosing to give up something so someone else can use it. That is something that they do, okay? And sharing is something that is taught. Younger children play independently instead of with other children. They yet often will want what the other child has simply because the other child had it. That's selfishness. I didn't want it until they had it, now I want it. That's selfishness. It's covetousness, and that's inherent in humans. Isn't it true for us as adults? We never knew we wanted it until it was advertised on TV, or even worse, a friend of ours brought it. Hey, look what I got. Well, let's go. Now I want one. I didn't even know what it was. Okay? That's just the way we are as people. Children are the same thing. It's inherent within us. So it takes work. You model this early. And they will be older before they understand and can put and be held accountable by some kind of sharing. But you started. First, it's just they have to wait patiently for the toy, if that's what they really want. So you're going to correct them. You may not have that. If they snatch it, you give it back and you correct your child. This is no. You have to wait patiently, or you play with another toy. That's a simple thing, but you have to teach them that. At the same time, you're going to teach them a sense of dominion, of ownership that belongs to you. This is what we were talking about earlier. There are a few things you choose that belongs to Rebecca, and it's completely up to her whether she shares it or not. Most of her toys, if someone else comes over, she should share, because we want to teach that skill. But reserve a couple things that say is no, you don't have to share that. That is Rebecca's. You decide who gets to play with it. Okay? That's teaching them stewardship responsibilities in terms of an ownership idea. And then when they share it, it's not because it's forced, it's because they want to. And that's a really neat thing to see when you see that developing in the heart of your child. So that's where that whole thing about sharing and why she can't claim everything as hers, okay? A few things, a few special toys, and you can even do that with her. We're just saying, well, pick up, what are your special toys? You know, make that special toy. Those are yours. You don't. Everything else, they have to share. Those, no. Only when they want to. So that's the next page, special toys, yes?
Then is it bad to make them have to share everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Not everything. Most things, not everything. Because this is simply a skill. We want, this is the next page, page 15. Child's special possessions that they are not required to share. Because it is this sense of dominion, of ownership, of responsibilities, and it allows you to start seeing where their heart is. Because if they're always keeping it to themselves, you know they're still selfish. When they start taking that special toy and they offer it, you know you're reaching their heart. And again, that's a great blessing. You start seeing that. You know they're getting it. Okay? At the same time, their stewardship over that is they have them protected. If they're sharing all their toys, then who's responsible? The one who's forced that issue. If you're making them share their toys and one of their friends breaks it because you said they had to share it, who's responsible for it being broken? You are, okay? You forced it. If she has shared a toy, or if your child has shared a toy, and it gets broken, who's responsible? The mom of the other kids. Well, yes, okay, they weren't doing it properly, but it got broken. But who has the ownership? The child has it, okay? Now here comes lessons in life. All right? There's a lot comes there. Because they allowed it, they put it at risk. Could I assess the risk properly to know that this is something I should have done? All right? It's not going to be part of life. Do you not have things you will loan it to most people, but there's certain people you never loan it to. You've assessed the risk. Or you've loaned it to someone and it got broken anyways, and you say, you know, well, it happened. They may or may not properly treat you with, I'll replace it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. You bear that because you loaned it. You bore that responsibility. So even as a young one, you're already teaching these life lessons. But see, if you don't have something that's theirs, you can't learn that. So these are just part of it. So that's why a special toy. This is stewardship. Now stewardship is also part if the child abuses his toys or with others, then they lose the privilege of having that toy. We talked about that earlier. So the isolation there is you remove the toy. Or you remove the child from the toy, like if they're out in the play area and they're not playing properly with it, you remove them from it. That's an isolation. Okay? Until they can learn to use it properly. Have some notes there about having other kids. If the parents are not there, you correct the child. Period. Okay? You're the steward of whatever's going on. You correct the child. If the parents are there, give them the opportunity to correct, because that's their child. If they still won't correct the child, you're still a steward of what you have. You still have to correct the child. And that may mean you don't invite them back. Now this becomes a hard thing, because you may lose friends.
Question. I go to music class and on Thursday nights, and this is when we went twice so far, but there's another person, another child that likes to sit next to my kids and doesn't listen when I have to redirect my child back. So for example, Joseph, she likes to get him to wander around. So I have to constantly bring Joseph back. He'll sit and listen to me, but then she'll come back, distract, he'll wander. to bring him back. He'll try to sit and listen, but then she comes back. No correcting, I'm correcting the other child. The child's not listening to my corrections, and then 45 minutes of that whole class, that's exactly what it was.
Are you teaching the class?
No. So then at the end of the session, the director of the class pulled me aside and asked me, you know, what's your comfort level with this other person? I told her about it, and she said, okay, I'm gonna need to talk to that other parent, because now the teacher saw, and now the teacher knows how Joseph is, and she's like, I've never seen this in your child, so I'm reaching out to you, because this is not what Joseph usually does. I said, I know, I'm trying, but he's so distracted, so
Yeah.
is the other one, so what do I,
No, that's
I don't do
appropriate,
anything.
because you're not responsible, you're not in charge of it.
So now she'll have to say something to the mom, and I just,
So what are the options here, all right? Your child's most important to you. You want them to be in the music class, but now you can see, is this becoming something where I'm actually ending up having something taught to my child I don't want to be taught,
right,
okay? So this teacher sounds like sharp enough to recognize I need to make a correction here. This mom's got to get in control, or the teacher needs to get in control. The teacher's actually the one who's allowed this already, so that's a problem there. If she had not brought that up, I would have brought it up, is look, I would need to know how you're running your classroom. If this is the way it's going to be, then I have to assess whether we can keep it coming, because this is teaching my child something I don't want them to learn. You see where I'm going with this?
yeah,
You're responsible for your child. If you have control of the situation, you're responsible for the situation. When you don't, you're making assessments. What's best for your child? Now, there's other ways you can handle it too. It could be is if it's not that bad in terms of teacher-child behavior, it could be part of teaching him. Joseph, we don't do that. We're Duffies, okay?
yeah.
We don't do that. We're here to learn this music, so you need to pay attention. If you can't do that, then we probably will stop coming to class, because your skill here is more important. So you're actually helping him learn some responsibility himself of, I want to come to class, I need to obey mommy, and wherever I go, I still need to obey mommy, not follow what other kids do. Here's family identity. Duffies obey.
Yeah.
Duffies are kind. Duffies obey mommy and daddy. Duffies obey the teacher. Duffies are kind and considerate to other people. Duffies don't wander off because other kids are doing bad things.
Yeah. Now, can Joseph understand that? Raymond did, because he needed to be corrected and he wouldn't follow. But then Joseph, I was trying to see if it was
Not all
childness
of
or
it.
foolishness, because he would just get suckered into
No.
that.
There's the whole thing, but this is what you're teaching them. Is like, no, we are Duffies, we don't do that. We don't wander off. You need to stay with mommy. That's as simple as it is for him.
Yeah.
But you need to understand clearly what you're actually doing. Otherwise, again, you're going to fall into this trap. Behavior and missing the heart. Because if it's not in your own mind what you're trying to teach them, you're just going to go back to what is the minimum acceptable behavior I can allow and get away with. And I'm not looking for minimal. I'm looking for what is going to help my child develop into the person God wants them to be. So I want a family identity there. I want them to learn to obey even when all the other stuff is not going the way I would like it. I'd like them to learn how to be respectful even to a teacher who is not taking charge. But at the same time, I'm going to protect, and if the class gets so bad that it's not working, just say, you know, we'll come back when he's older and can handle the other kids being disobedient. Okay, that's an excellent scenario, because that's life.
Well, I know, I'm thinking,
Running into that so often.
And I'm there to help, but so
Let's
what if I
face
wasn't
it.
there?
When I was growing up, no one would dare do that. It's just, no way you would dare do that. But I know it's gotten a lot worse, even with some of the homeschooling groups. You know, toward the end of our kids being in it, we started running into these parents, even homeschooling groups. They're supposed to be Christians, they're supposed to be on track, and like, they just let their kids do anything and everything, and you correct them, the parent gets mad at you. So finally it becomes, if we're in charge of classes, you're not welcome here. Or if we're not in class, it's like, I guess we're not going to be part of this. So you drop out of the co-ops or whatever you have to do. Because the training of your child is your responsibility. And it may mean some hard things. When it comes to some of this, you may lose friends, and that's hard. It hurts. At the same time, which is more important, your friendships or your child? That's not being child-centered, that's being the steward of what God has trusted you, and that's your child. And if your friends will not cooperate, and again, that's not saying that they have to do it exactly the same way. It just means that they have a kindness and show some courtesy to you and your children and what you're doing. If they won't do that, then they're not welcome in your home. If they will not respect your property and they're abusing it, they're not welcome. If the parents won't do it, that's obvious. If the children won't do it, that's up to the parents responsible. So it's just like the parents are abusing the same way. You're not having them come back. If they invite you over, maybe you can go over there because that's their property. That's up to them what they want to do with it, bad stewardship, unless it's affecting your children that they want to get involved in the same thing. Because the standards you set for your home, guess where they apply? Everywhere they go. Because they're Duffies, and this is what we do as Duffies. There's your family identity. And that is so much part of this. My standards are my standards wherever I go, because as a Christian, the standards God has set for me belong everywhere I go. Right? I'm not a Christian here and I get out. You know, we don't want Holy Ghost sweepers on the front door of the church. You come in here and you're really nice a Christian, you walk out the door, and the doors sweep off the Holy Ghost, so you're now no longer having to live as a Christian. You know, what's your identity? I'm a Christian. I behave this way anywhere I am, no matter what I'm doing. Teach that your child and identify with your family first. As they get older, that identity should switch over to, I do it because this is what God has. They become a Christian because they're a Christian, not just a Duffy. Okay? That's what we're after. My kids as adults, they are what they are because that's who they are. The older two, it's because they're Christians. Jenny is because he understands that as a Harris, this is what we are as Harrises. Not because I'm a Harris, because he's a Harris. There's a difference between the two. He's taken the identity, now it's his identity, which he's tied back, and we purposely did this, to generations ago. It's nice to be where we could go when we go down Mississippi and show him his great, 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 great grandfather's grave. And trace some different graveyards. This is this person, I knew a little bit about them, this is your heritage. You're carrying that, you know, and he perked up with that one, like, wow, okay, I need to do this. It's a great thing to do. So that becomes important. What is their identity? The more solid it is in something that's good, the greater they can withstand the peer pressure to be something else. That's the only way you can stand against a society. And it starts when they're little ones. Make them excited to be part of your family. And it should be. Make up a theme song. Okay? You know, children can learn to sing, right? Remember the Robins had this whole Robins family song. You know, we didn't get that elaborate, but, you know, we came up with ditties and stuff, and like, make it exciting. Because in a situation like that, it becomes a simple thing. Even for 2-year-old, well, no, this is what I am because of who I am as a Duffy. So obeying mommy is more important than wandering off. So that's all part. Speaking habits, because we're now really late. Just to fill in the blanks here, appropriate volume. All right, we understand the scriptures I have here. Ephesians 4:29, important verse to teach your children. Right? Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word is good, that might good according to the need of the moment, that it might give grace to those who hear. Good thing to teach your children, because unwholesome things want to come out, and they're selfish, they don't think about other people. So how we speak. James 1:19, it's easy to come out with anger, but we need to learn to control that, because the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God, so we need to be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Listening is a much important skill, more important skill than speaking. That's why God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. James 3:2 and 12, which Phil did a great job in preaching on. So go to the YouTube site and watch Phil's sermon on the tongue, untamable. It's dangerous. Learning to control is a sign of maturity. So appropriate volume is the first blank. Okay, there's an indoor voice, there's an outdoor voice. Learning to speak with discretion. A loud enough voice to be heard, but no loud to be rude. Appropriate tone. Okay, a tone that matches the purpose. Okay, whining is an unacceptable form of communication. It's the wrong tone. Yelling to get help is appropriate. Yelling at your parents is not. Rebecca's problem partly is what she said and how she said it. Giving you command? No. Wrong tone. Asking? Maybe. But no, not the other. All right, wrong tone. Posture, I mentioned this before. Okay, when you're speaking, they should show respect to you. Period. If you're giving a command, make sure you have their attention. That may mean they stand there. Sometimes if we're having problems, like, all right, stand at attention. All right, look at me. You know, it's like, or they're sitting. Look at me here. And their eyes weren't here. They have the right posture. And it's amazing what happens just getting that. The focus is correct. They're not distracted. They get it. And then they can do it. So posture is even part of that. Again, it takes training. It's a skill to learn. Appropriate time for what is being said. Were many words, transgressions unavoidable, but he who restrains his lip is wise. There's a time to speak and a time to be quiet. Proverbs 17, 27, 28 runs along the same thing. Timing of when to say things. Interrupting. As they get older, one other class will teach about the interrupt rule. How to interrupt appropriately. Certainly interrupt if there's an emergency. But otherwise, children need to show patience just like we need to show patience. It's rude to interrupt people. Be patient, look for the break, and do that. We teach them to put your hand on their hip or on their leg until their attention is there. Diana will even do that herself in a conversation. She may just put her hand on me and like, okay, she wants to say something. So I end my sentence and yes, dear, you know. Or in multiple people, she may do the same thing because she'd like to say something. And she doesn't want to be rude. Interrupting. Answering with respect. Greetings. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but hello, hi, appropriate terms of respect. When called, yes, mommy, yes, daddy. And then appropriate words. Several scriptures there. Pleasant words are honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Okay? Teach them to speak properly. Respectful. There's the use of titles. If someone's an adult, doesn't want your child to call them by a title, it's usually because they don't want to feel they're that old. Just quietly remind them in private, it says, you are that old, and my child is going to show you respect. And calling you by a first name is not respectful. So what title would you like? Okay? I might be overboard on this, or some people think, but it's your child you're talking about. It's about teaching them, not about the older person not wanting to be older. Okay? And lower themselves to the level of your child. Your child needs to show them respect. Figure out a way to show that. Gracious, okay, rude and crude, unwholesome things. Teach them to speak appropriately. Submissive. Tantrums are part of that. Babbling, no, I said earlier, is tolerated. Looking at you and saying no, that's defiance, that's not. Tantrums, we'll cover in a minute. Thank you. Okay, just the heart of gratitude need to be there. Please, thank you. Okay, not grunts, okay? You're not raising apes, okay? You're not raising pigs. They grunt. Pigs grunt. People speak. So speak. Learn to do that. Require yes. We had to work on that one because it was like, yeah. What is that? Where is that? How do you spell it? Okay. Yes. No. Okay. Help it. It'll help them a lot in self-control and grammar later. All right. Miscellaneous matters. Fussy, whining. Okay. You have babies coming. Fussy time. What did you do for fussy time? Children get kind of fussy, right? Most children, as infants, there's this period of time. There's just they're fed. Their diapers change. It's just they're just fussy. Okay. What do you do? You don't remember. Pass them off to somebody else. Here's where Grandma and Grandpa come in. You can take the child for a while. Okay.
Would you give them distraction?
Hold them, comfort them. They're just fussy. Okay. Actually, Jonathan's the only one really seemed to have that problem. He was about 9 o'clock at night. He's a month, 2 months old, and just started developing. It's like, he'd just be fussy. I'm like, I think we've done everything, okay. I mean, we know he's had his last diaper was wet. It wasn't yellow, so we know he's hydrated. He just ate. What's wrong with him? And it was interesting is Diane would give him to me, And let's face it, by 9 o'clock, she's tired. I think babies sometimes can sense that, and Dad was calmer, and he would calm down some. And I was a little more fresh. I wasn't worn out from everything I did that day. Physically, yes, but not emotionally. I could handle a little bit more. She was getting at the end of her ropes. You calm down. You comfort him. There's just a fussy period. But what you want to do is think. And that's why I put it that way. That's number one. Think before action. Why are they crying? What's causing this? And there could be a lot of things that could do it, right? Pain, hunger, discomfort, and that's why learning your child's cry is important. Learning that early is helpful to know what's going on. Difference between those kind of cries and not getting what they want. Okay, if it's not getting what you want, there's a different problem. You're going to take whatever actions based on what is best for the long term, that's your blank, long-term interest of the child. Okay, obviously safety issues require immediate attention. Some issues may be reasonably delayed. You got 2 kids, one's getting fussy because they have a dirty diaper, and the other one's in the bathtub. Guess which one you take care of? The bathtub. Okay, there's a safety issue here. All right, finish the bath and go change the diaper. You're going to be assessing those things constantly. Sometimes they're not assessed very well. They're still being fussy. What about when they're starting to cut teeth? They get fussy from that, okay? The first time that happens, you don't know what's going on. It's like, this is not the fussy period. What's going on with them? It just seems so miserable. Well, they're cutting teeth. And then you start asking around and find out what to do about that. There's some information here about that. Be careful. There is a product out there. Unfortunately, I think some of our parents here were starting to use it. Someone who was ignorant started recommending it. It actually has belladonna in it, and it's caused death of several kids. If you, I forgot the name of it, but if you Google it, huh?
A teething gel.
Teeth.
Or something.
Highland drops, does Highland?
Well, no, it's something you put in the mouth.
Well, there's different kinds of drops. I don't remember the name of it.
I don't do.
You can ask Diane, she'll tell you. You research it, if you Google it, the first thing that comes up is an FDA warning about it. Because it has caused several deaths of children because it has belladonna in it. Belladonna is a poison. Okay? We have several things or medications that can be poisoned in high doses, but this is not a medicine. It's homeopathic. And because of that, standards are up and down, and sometimes if you're too much concentrated, kids will get very, very sick, and tragically some died. So do some research on that for cutting teeth. But that's the first one comes up. Why are they fussy? If it may be something like that. An old thing was get a piece of cloth, put sugar in it, sew it together, and then soak it in bourbon, and let them chew on it. And our pediatrician said, and if it doesn't work, drink the rest of the bourbon yourself. Okay, there's old school. You know, there are different products out there, and some are safer than others, but things to help them. The teething toys you put in the freezer are excellent for teething, because they numb it because of the cold. Completely safe. It lets them chew, which actually helps them get the teeth through. But this is going back to they're fussy, figure out why they're fussy. If it's just a fussy period, comfort them. 3, dealing with fussiness. I just covered all that. Again, figure it out. Could be something else. If it's because they are unhappy about what is happening because they want to be doing something else, so that's rebellion, okay? So isolate them, and then come back a little while and say is when you're happy. So be happy, not fussy. Okay, that's not the right reaction because you didn't get your way. Whining, we talked about that. Temper tantrums. Temper tantrums and frustration tantrums are different from each other. There's papers on this that go in extensively. But in short, a temper tantrum is an outburst of anger related to not getting what they want. Okay? It's an outburst of anger. They're not getting what they desire. And it is a rejection of the parental authority that's being exerted over them. That includes passive, going limp can be part of that. Prevention, a couple things. If you are consistent in correcting illegitimate fussiness, which was before, then your child will probably not try it, or you head it off before it even begins. All right? So if you're consistent early on, you're probably not going to experience this. Or if you do, it's going to be short-lived because you already know how to deal with it and been dealing with it. And there's two things that are going to happen with it. First of all, if it's a temper tantrum, it needs an audience. Okay? Remove the audience. So it's going to be simple. You express your displeasure for what they're doing. You're bigger than they are. Because they're tantrum, they may be on the floor doing whatever. Okay? Depending where they are. If you're in public, physically pick them up to the car and to home. All right? I am told, I don't remember, I was very young, I threw a tantrum in a store with my mother while she was shopping. And she grabbed me, put me in the car, and drove me home. And I'm told she simply handed me to my father and said, "You do something with him, he's your son." Obviously, she was very upset with me and didn't want to take ownership that I was also her son. I'm now just my father's son. My father, being an old country fellow, just looked at me and said, seems a little hot to me. He grabbed me and he put me in a cold shower. I'm told that I stopped fairly quickly and I never had a tantrum ever after that. Now, hopefully you never get to that stage. But what was being done right, okay? Remove the audience. Tantrums work in public settings because moms, dads are going to start doing anything to get it to stop because they're embarrassed. And they want to finish what they're doing. Hence, it works. It works once, they'll keep doing it because they're getting what they want. They want something, they're not getting it. Here's my outburst. So, you remove them from the audience, the public. Next, you're going to express your displeasure, and you will isolate them. Okay? They're in their room, they're in the playpen, they're in whatever, they're isolated, and you tell them, I will come back later after you've calmed down, and then we'll deal with it. That's it. Leave them alone. If they keep crying, let them cry. Okay? It needs an audience. It won't take too many times they learn it doesn't work. And that's what they're gambling on, and that's why a tantrum keeps going on. It works. They got what they wanted. No audience, and it became negative. It's bad. Okay? There's defiance here, so isolation removes them from the opportunity. And as they get older, then it may be increased into chastening them. Okay? Maybe not much when they're little, but that will increase as they get older, as they're capable of understanding more. It may mean a chastising, which we'll cover in detail in a later class for older ones. But you get the point here. Okay? Remove them from the audience, isolate them. We will deal with this when you're calm. That's the biggest thing. If it's in public, remove them. I know it's a pain, but if you let them win there, they're going to keep doing it because they will get what they want. Take them home, isolate them. You do that a few times, and it's going to stop. If it continues on, you can try my dad's method. It worked on me, so what can I say? All right? I do have the correction here. If they're old enough to remember, and we put in there 2 and above, and they do that more than once, then it also means chastising after they calm down. All right? Use the first couple times, just isolate them, and that's enough, because that is the pain of I'm not getting what I want, and it's not going to work.
So could you just at that point go into the car, chastise them in the car, and then go back in and try again?
40 years ago, I would say you don't even have to go to the car, you could do it in the store. When I was a kid, that was not a problem. As it is now, I'm not even sure I'd do it in the car.
Nowadays, I notice, and I don't mean to answer your question, but nowadays with cameras and everything out there, I think last time we had this seminar, I mentioned the same. That's the biggest thing. It's like I know to discipline Monique in the time. I know what she needs, but it's like there's so many eyes. As soon as the tires start crying, everybody starts looking at you. So now you're on the spotlight, and I can't any sign of hitting or anything. People have cell phones. They're ready to call CPS.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You have do-gooders who want to get involved in everything except what they should get involved in, and they want to call CPS. You got to deal with CPS. Now, we had those kinds of threats even when our kids were young, and I had no problem dealing with CPS because on behalf of another family, I called CPS and said, look, I understand you're giving this family a hassle, this part of our church. they're following the parenting practice we're teaching them. I would be very glad to come down and teach all of your staff what proper chastisement is. Because we've got this whole thing about using implements. And she said, use your hand. And we're on talking on the phone. I said, you can't use me, I have a big hand. If I hit my kid with my hand, he's flying across the room. All right? We use an implement to create a high sting and not cause any physical damage. Again, I will come down and I will teach your whole staff because it irritates me, and I find it's great sin that Christians abuse their children in the name of saying they're following the biblical principles, and they're not. If they're physically harming their child, they're being abusive. And I will teach your whole staff how to deal with this. Now, of course, they didn't take me up on my offer. But see, that is something I'm very confident, and I have no problem. And we also had a plan. If CPS hassled us, we already knew what we were doing for children. Because absolutely, they're not getting all of our children. Period. Okay? We had a plan in place. You have to take that risk of what you are capable of handling and what you're willing to handle. Can you deal with it? In New York State, up to this point, who knows what's going to come with this current legislature? Family court judges is, yes, you may physically chastise. It's not against the law. Most of your CPS workers tend to be women who do not have children and took some class in a college and have been trained to be idiots. And I hate to say it that way. It's because, like, you have a brain, you use it, you proved it, you can pass these things, and you got the information that is reasonable sucked out of you, so you're acting unreasonable. You have no idea what you're talking about, but they want to make out like, I am the expert. You're not the expert. Okay? God's Word's the expert. He designed us. We want to be sure we're doing this correctly and how to help people do it in a biblical way that's kind and corrects what needs to be corrected with never abusing. Okay? So go back to that. In this society, where we are at now, here in New York, I would never do it any place in public. I would get to some place that you know is absolutely private and then correct your child. If you're in an apartment, teach your child to cry into a pillow. Okay, otherwise you just have to be willing to know you're going to have to hassle with CPS and do-gooders who don't know what they're talking about. They'll allow children to abuse all sorts of people, but they themselves, they're going to interfere with what they shouldn't interfere with. They'll tolerate any kind of actual sin, but not what you do deal with correcting sin. So that's kind of our society. So, you know, Phil said it well. You want to, you know you need to. Take the time. Your child is worth it. It's a hassle. It's frustrating. Take them home. Isolate them. Deal with it. Then go back and do what you need to do. That's going to be life. However, when it comes to tantrums, again, you do this a couple times, you're not going to do it again. A temper tantrum needs that audience, and it needs to know it's going to win. As soon as it comes to is, there is no audience, no one's watching me, and I'm not winning. There's an old Andy Griffith one where Opie has this friend that says, hey, this look, and taught him to do this temper tantrum. Opie goes into Andy's office and wanted something. Andy said no, and so he threw himself on the ground and was going back and forth, and Andy looked over the desk and said, you know, Opie, what are you doing? And he stopped completely, looks at his dad and says, I'm throwing a tantrum. And he went back to it. And he said, well, let me know when you're done. And he stopped. Okay? That was back when? That shows in the 60s. So see, you can see there's a problem. Temper tantrums were not a problem until really into the 60s, when psychology started going in and how you raise your children. Before that, it was rare. If you go to other cultures, you don't find kids doing temper tantrums. So what's going on in our culture? It has to do with our parenting philosophy. We've taught the child from early on, you get what you want because the world is centered around you. Rather than you're a welcome member of the family, you're it. And we cater to that. So it's going to create problems. The kids pick it up from other kids. They see other kids getting away with it, and they'll try it. And if they win, we'll do it again. So do not let your kids hold you hostage.